Hello, welcome my friends. Today I'm reviewing the 2011 movie starring Meryl Streep called The Iron Lady. I'm on a mission to be the most prolific reviewer of all time, so to do that I review books, movies, podcasts, mostly movies though. And this movie, when it came out, I was aware of its existence, but I wasn't in any great rush to watch it because I'm not one of those people who watches every Academy winning performance, although I think I probably should start doing that. And of course, Meryl Streep is probably one of the best actors of our generation and probably one of the best Hollywood actors of all time. So that goes without saying. But honestly, I haven't actually watched a lot of her performances. She always seemed a bit aloof to me and of a different generation. And the only one that I really watched was uh, maybe Mamma Mia. Probably other movies too, but obviously Mamma Mia is not going to have a great impression on the acting skills of Meryl Streep on anyone. But yeah, so I didn't watch this, and I was watching a very long and capably made YouTube video. I forgot what the guy's name is, but basically he was reviewing the worst biopics of the 2000, like of this century. And surprisingly, he didn't put Oppenheimer in it because I believe that Oppenheimer is one of the worst biopics of the past century. But of course, the ones that he mentioned are a lot worse than Oppenheimer because generally they're cliched, they have bad performances, etc., etc. So this one, The Iron Lady, was on that list. And the reason it was on that list was basically that The Iron Lady, if you don't know, is a biopic about Margaret Thatcher, the Prime Minister, the longest serving British Prime Minister of the 20th century, the first British female Prime Minister, and a remarkably divisive person. So people in the UK 100% have opinions about Margaret Thatcher. 100%. So she's very, very divisive. And the criticism of this movie is that it's very neutral and it doesn't have like a political point of view about Margaret Thatcher. And I watched it and I would say it's not neutral, but it's not partisan, if that makes any sense. Because everything that Margaret Thatcher stood for is clearly there, right? She says that she is like for small businesses, she's against regulation, she's, like neoconservative from that time period. She says all of the talking points. She's that person ideologically. Maybe the things that they don't explain necessarily are why the IRA is bombing British politicians at that time. There's nothing about the troubles, and there's nothing about like why those IRA prisoners were on, you know, they were hunger striking and they died, some of them, and Margaret Thatcher didn't do anything. And I'm not gonna like condemn her for that because I don't know the details of what happened. But yeah, so she's a remarkably divisive person. There was clashes with labor and deregulation and privatization. And that whole thing, it started with Margaret Thatcher. And, I grew up in Canada and it hit Canada in the province where I was from, like in 1994, I believe, with Mike Harris and the quotation mark common sense revolution. So I'm quite aware of what kind of philosophy Thatcher opposed, at least in terms of government spending and cuts and privatization and all that, and kind of felt the effects as a working class person myself, not from Margaret Thatcher because I'm not British, but from equivalents to Margaret Thatcher in my own country. So I don't think it's quite neutral. But as I said, it could be like the IRA thing is not very well explained. And I think the problem with the film is that they want to tell a story about, it's unclear what kind of story they want to tell about Margaret Thatcher. Is she a woman who is dealing with dementia and she is kind of struggling with that? I think it would be a very interesting film, actually, to show someone who had such kind of a grasp on the world be stricken by this disease that she has no control over. But I think that the portrayal of dementia was really, really odd because, I don't know, I've never been demented and I've never dealt with anybody who has had dementia, but I'm pretty sure that the problem is that they believe what they're experiencing is to be reality, right? And I'm not sure if they actually hallucinate or they just forget things, right? So they forget that they have children, they forget that people have died and all of that stuff. In this film, Margaret Thatcher is having long conversations with her dead husband, Dennis, and it begins sort of in like a kind of goofy mode, and then Dennis, the character of her imagination, gets more and more aggressive and cutting. And I kind of liked the idea of that, but I don't think that it worked well. Because, people who have schizophrenia, for example, they hear voice. I mean, it depends on culture also, but like in the West, generally the hallucinations are, mean spirited and they say evil things to you and they kind of pull you down. So I like the fact that this hallucination in the beginning seemed to be benign, but then actually it's about her guilt. So I liked that, but I don't think it was executed well enough for people to understand what was going on. And the problem is they want it to be a biopic, so they want to talk about like everything that Margaret Thatcher did, like the Falklands War, her rise to power, and they also want this sort of like, for lack of a better word, artsy fartsy dealing with dementia thing. And I think that they've tried to cram two movies into one, and that's why it doesn't work. Like if you just focused on Margaret Thatcher, the person who was remarkably powerful, and she's dealing with a situation where she feels powerless, I don't think people would like that necessarily, but they wouldn't, like if you did that film well, then I think people would respect it. But this film manages to piss off people who loved Margaret Thatcher, piss off people who hated Margaret Thatcher, and not present an interesting narrative about Margaret Thatcher. So that's all true. So I can understand why the critical and public reception of this movie was very mixed. What about Meryl Streep? Meryl Streep does an amazing job. So I'm going to see, I need to vamp a little bit because, actually I won't waste time looking that up, but there was, in the series The Crown, which is also a very interesting explanation and exploration of British politics over the past 50 years of the life of, more than 50 years, like 80 years, the life of Queen Elizabeth II. So obviously Margaret Thatcher had a big role to play in the Queen's life and her reign and all of that stuff. So she appears as a character in the television series The Crown, and I think the difference between whoever was doing that performance and Margaret Thatcher's performance is like night and day. Not Margaret Thatcher. Meryl Streep's performance as Margaret Thatcher is like night and day. So Meryl Streep is really inhabiting the role. She's like speaking like her. She's acting like her. She looks like her. The prosthetics are on point, and clearly she's like, yeah, I'm gonna win an Oscar for this. Like she's working really hard to win an Oscar, and she does a great job. Yeah, but her performance is the only redeemable thing about the movie. And why I brought up the other actress is because it feels like a caricature in the series The Crown of Margaret Thatcher. And I think that's problematic with all kind of important quotation marks, important people in film, is that you can either sort of look at the essence of them, which I think Meryl Streep has done in her performance, or you can focus on external aspects and you can kind of make a caricature of that person, like Gorbachev, like Margaret Thatcher, like Reagan, and so on and so on, and Donald Trump as well. And I watched recently a movie which is another biopic, but it's about the time before Donald Trump became president, called The Apprentice. And that is really good because it stars the guy who played Bucky in the MCU. I forgot what his name is at the moment, but he inhabits the role, and it's not a caricature. You can tell it's Trump, but you can tell it's like an actor acting as this character of Trump, if that makes any sense. So Meryl Streep is acting as the character of Margaret Thatcher, and it's not a caricature. So should you watch it? I think if you are I don't know. I don't know. Because it's not a great film, but if you don't watch it, you don't get Meryl Streep's performance. So yeah, I'd say watch it. Like 6 out of 10 would be my review of it. But what do you think? If you've seen The Iron Lady starring Margaret Thatcher, leave your thoughts in the comments. If you like what I do, please subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to get to 300 subscribers by the end of January, and I believe I'm at 283. All right, and if you're listening on Spotify, please give me a follow. Thank you. Bye-bye.